Hey, everybody. Welcome to Maven Analytics Open Campus. We've got an amazing session right now with Dustin. He has put together what I think is the most comprehensive jobs report. And he also does an amazing job in a lot of other areas trying to help folks who are looking for their first job in data or to accelerate their data career. So we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But first, I want to talk about what's going on today and this week. So this is part of Open Campus Week for Maven Analytics. We've got 3 days of live sessions. They're all free. I'll post a link to a place where you can register for all of them. And also you can watch some of the previous sessions that we did yesterday and earlier today. Today, we've got Dustin here. Next, we'll have Enrique showing you how to build an amazing analytics portfolio. And then we'll have Chris talking about how to ace the analytics interview. Then we've got one more day of this tomorrow. We'll have Chris talking about some of the common paths like data analyst versus data engineer, data scientist, and helping you figure out which one might be right for you. Then we'll have Kristen joining us. She's got a really fun background. I like to say she's kind of really taken control of her own destiny in data. She's created an amazing life for herself and just a really interesting career where she runs her own business and as a consultant, and she just takes on the projects that are really exciting for her. And I think you'll be really inspired to hear from her. Then we'll have Alice, who as a university instructor in data has helped over 400 students with their data science projects. And she's got some great lessons there. And I will close out the week with a step-by-step guide to launching your data career. Yesterday, we had a bunch of sessions as well on Excel, SQL, Power BI, Python, and then data visualization. All of that is available to watch on demand. We'll leave that up for a while. So if there's any of these that you were interested in but you missed, feel free to go check them out. And then let's talk about what we're going to do today. So for many of you probably know Dustin, but for anybody who doesn't know Dustin, he is, man, there's a lot I can say about Dustin. So he's a Tableau product manager. He runs and is one of the co-founders of the Data Careers Summit, which I'll post a link to in a minute. He's also the host of the Data Ideas podcast. He's all over live event scene and for anything that's data related. And so there's so many things that he's done. I think some of the things that I really want to focus on today are the things he does specifically around trying to help people build data careers. And I think I'm actually I want to bring this up on the screen, Dustin, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm going to bring up one of your LinkedIn posts that I think is just a really good example of how folks could be benefiting from your content. So this is a post from Dustin about 3 weeks ago, where it's an aggregation of jobs that he's seen that are available. He's talking about 55 jobs that are open. And if you follow Dustin and you're seeing his content, you can see these. He does it every week. It's just a great way to keep a pulse on the jobs, and not only these jobs that are open, but who are the people that are sharing them too, right? So we talked a little bit in the last session about it's one thing to find job openings. It's really important to understand who's the hiring manager, who's actively engaged on these things. And if you follow Dustin, you'll be getting this stuff all the time. So just wanted to let you guys know that that this is here. So Dustin, I'd love to ask you a little bit about that that specific thing, the weekly jobs roundup. Like, what made you start doing it, and kind of what have you learned from doing it?
Yeah, great question. And thanks again for inviting me to be here. It's really good to be here. I've already been interacting with some folks in the chat. It's a fun and very lively chat. So that's definitely reflective of the great event that's been put together here and the interest in the topic. Regarding that post, it's interesting as I continued to put out content on data and analytics related stuff. And grew a following on LinkedIn, which was kind of to my surprise. Then the next thing to my surprise was, I started doing this post where I was like, my thought behind it was, I'm seeing all these positions posted by folks, and you can, like you said, you can click right on who the person is. You can send a message to them, whether you're connected or not. You can send an email if you're not connected to them, and reach straight out to hiring managers. And, I was fortunate enough to have a job while I was building a following on LinkedIn. But I thought to myself, geez, like, what about the folks that haven't been building a following and are reaching out maybe to me or to others and asking like, hey, have you seen anyone that's hiring? Well, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people hiring in my feed. And so I thought, why don't I start putting together a weekly post that summarizes them? And it started out pretty small, and now it's grown and grown. I think right now in particular, there's a lot of folks posting positions, which is great to see, because I've actually had some record numbers in terms of number of roles in my posts in the last few weeks. But the reception to it, to that post, was way beyond what I expected. And I'll go to events around here in southeastern Wisconsin where I live. I live in Milwaukee. I saw some Packers fans in the chat. So yes, I'm a cheesehead. Yes, I love the Packers, all that good stuff. But I'll go to events around here, and frankly, sometimes folks that I don't really know or don't know that well will say like, hey, love the post. Like I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm like, wow, like, there's something about this that has really resonated with folks, with that ability to kind of take a look at who are the people behind these positions that are being hired for and maybe reach out to them directly. And another learning that I've gotten is that, folks really are actually reaching out to the people that see these positions that get posted on LinkedIn. I've talked with folks that have said, hey, you put my position in that post, and then my inbox blew up. So, which I think is a good thing, but these are just that's how it came about, and some of the things that I see and hear from it. So
yeah, it's so fun. Awesome. I just think of it, for somebody who is looking for work, it's really, really high value, and it's a ton of legwork to put it together. But like, I think it's worth it. I think, you're bearing the brunt of all the work, but I think you're creating a lot of value for job seekers and hiring folks. And like, this is not something Dustin gets paid to do. It's something that he felt that there was a need for. So I love it. I think it's actually the first time that I got to know you. I saw this and I was like, this is amazing.
Oh, really?
I was like, I want my students to see this. It was either that or one of your data jobs reports, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is also amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, here, I'm going to post some links here in the comments. One to follow Dustin on LinkedIn. The next one is for his Data Career Summit, which I want to ask about him next. Another is the Data Ideas podcast, and then a couple to
learn
more about Open Session and register. So
sure,
let's talk about the Data Career Summit.
Sure.
The next one's in February.
Yep.
And it was really successful this September. Some amazing guests that you had. Same question as before, like, what made you and Brandy start doing this? Yeah,
totally. Yeah. So, it's interesting because it was really organic how it came about. Like, so Brandy, who, John mentioned, Brandy Beals is a fellow Tableau ambassador here in the Milwaukee area. So we know each other from being in the Tableau world for 10 plus years. And, what we noticed was, probably around 2019, we kind of like I said, we've been in the analytics world for quite a while, but things hit an inflection point around that time, 2018, 2019, where we started to get a lot more questions from individuals, parents of individuals going to college or graduating high school or whatever, folks transitioning from one career to the next, even HR departments asking like, hey, like, what do you think about these data analyst roles that we're creating? Like, how should we put these together? And so we're getting asked all these questions. And in the meantime, I started actually I was an analytics manager at the time. And I started getting asked so many questions about this where I'm like, it's one thing for me to answer these questions anecdotally based on my own experience, but also being a data person, naturally, I wanted to see what the data tells me. And so what I started doing was I started scraping job postings, 100 or so every 6 months, and just taking all the key details out of there, like the years of experience required, the skills that are required, things like that, just so I had a good pulse point on what other companies were looking for, so I could make informed recommendations to our other hiring managers, hiring for analyst roles, to HR professionals, as well as to those parents and those individuals asking questions of me of like, what are the things I should be looking at? So I wanted to be able to combine my expertise along with the data. And then from there, Brandy was like, hey, like, I saw you posted like some of these things from this report you're putting together, because I thought, this might be useful to others. I'll put it out on LinkedIn or whatever. And it turned out people wanted to see it.
Yeah.
And then her and I just started talking because she was like, you know what? I'm getting a lot of the same questions. I mentioned we knew each other from the Tableau world, and she said, what if we put together an event that took your report several steps further, where we brought in some of the experts around some of these skills and hiring practices and requirements and things like that, and do an event around it to kind of really take it to the next level and help folks kind of tactically know what they have to do to now take this information into action to go out there and get into the field or transition into the field. So that was how it was born, was totally organically.
Yeah, that's awesome. What what are some things you've learned from kind of running an event like that and now like achieving pretty amazing scale with it?
Yeah, a lot. One is that I'm pretty tired, to be honest with you. I say that half jokingly, half seriously. It is a lot of work, as you guys know from putting on this event, but it's well worth it. It's we wouldn't do it if we didn't think it added value to folks. And I think the biggest learning is just how much of a demand and appetite there is for insights on data and analytics and data science careers, as well as just kind of tactical advice for how to take that information and run with it. Okay, so I have to learn these skills. How do I go do it? Where are the places I can go learn it? Who are the people that can help me? Things like that. How do I network? All these kinds of things. How do I go from an analyst to a manager, even as an emerging topic, or from a manager to a senior executive in analytics? We're seeing VP of analytics positions like that. So huge appetite. And after our last summit, we saw tons of posts on social. We encourage people to like post their learnings, and kind of like blew up. Like we saw all these posts and people not only tagging Brandy and I, but tagging the speakers that partook in it. And folks were just like super appreciative of people giving their time to help on the topic. So that's the biggest takeaway and most rewarding thing from my standpoint.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're definitely kind of feeling the same way, even just from the first day of running this event. It's really awesome. It seems like folks are grateful for the content, and it's just a lot of fun getting to interact with everybody. That's great.
Sure.
I'd love to jump to hearing about the Data Ideas podcast. So has that started up again, season 2, or is it about to start? I know we're
Great question. Very timely. So the first episode is actually going to be live tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central Time. So Brandy and I are going to do kind of, so Brandy, who hosts the Career Summit with me, are actually going to open up season 2 together, just doing kind of a, hey, what's the kind of stuff we've been up to? We've got a lot of inbox messages we haven't been able to get to, and we kind of just wanted to give an update on like what's been going on with the summit, what things have we been doing, like what things are coming in season 2 of the Data Ideas podcast. And then kind of a rundown of hot topics. So we're going to do that live tomorrow. That'll be the next published episode, first episode of season 2. And then I've already recorded episode 2, which is going to be a really interesting one on data engineering and a career in data engineering. So that's going to come up in 2 weeks from now.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I posted a link in the chat to the YouTube channel. So if you guys want to watch the videos, I think it's also on like Spotify, all of the audio distribution, most of the places that folks would like, right?
Correct. Yep. It's on most major platforms. And I don't have recordings of all of the episodes on YouTube. So what I'll do is I'll put this link to the Spotify.
Awesome.
Let's see here. Here it is. Yep. Right into the channel. So you can go ahead and find all of the, historical episodes here. And then you'll get notified if you follow this one of all of the new ones coming up for season 2.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah. Just another example of where Dustin is just giving back amazing content to people who are trying to build a career, the same career that's been, very good to him. So it's just, I love that you're doing all this stuff, Dustin.
Thank you. It's very kind of you. John is, is he a nice guy?
Sometimes I can be.
Okay. I only know the nice side.
yeah. I think most people. So the biggest thing I wanted to get you to share here is your data jobs trends report, which sure. I think, Dustin talked a little bit about this, but I think I haven't seen anyone else in our industry do such a good job of gathering so much data and then analyzing it and being able to share the insights around, levels and what skills are people looking for, the availability of jobs. So it's just, there's so much rich stuff. There's probably no way we can get through all of it in this call, but I wanted to leave basically the entire remainder of the session for you to just take us wherever you think makes sense within that report, because there's so much good stuff in there. And folks, if you want to throw questions, you could throw them in the chat. It's a little easier for them to get lost there. There's a separate questions tab, and we can try to save a little bit of time at the end to do some Q&A specifically if we have time. But yeah, Dustin, let's launch into the job trends report.
Perfect. Yeah, let me share my screen here, and then also, like John said, feel free to ask questions. I'll try to get to as many as I can, and it can be on any of the other things too that John mentioned in the introductory first 15 minutes here. I'm going to share my screen. You should see a document, which I promise I will zoom in on. So I started to actually, you can see how formal this has become. I'm actually just going to start with this right here. I mentioned how this started. It started in 2019 when I was an analytics manager at a company getting asked all these questions from analysts, from HR, and what are the skills that are needed? What do I need to get a position? What do I need to write a position? And I never envisioned it being a report. I'd be sitting here today on October 26, 2023, presenting at the Maven Analytics event. I really was doing this just as a tool for myself. Again, just to keep a pulse point on the market. And have an informed, be able to make informed, be an informed advisor, we'll put it that way, of others that are asking me questions about the market. And I started just putting it out onto social, and folks seemed to have interest in it. And then folks started to ask me, hey, when's the next one coming? And all right, would get tagged on a post that said, hey, I can't wait to see the next insight or something like that. And I thought, well, seems like there's some value. I'm going to keep doing this as long as there's value in it. And now we have this wonderful branded report that Brandy Beals, the co-host of the Data Career Summit, helped me put together here. So I mentioned kind of the background, and just to be clear, it's 100 job postings that I'm looking at every 6 months. Okay. And I'm finding these positions on corporate and major career sites. So think like Fortune 500, and then your other big career sites, right? Analytics related titles. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. It's not data science that I'm going after here. It's not data engineering. It really is that data analytics and related titles. So you think like data analyst, senior analyst, analytics manager, director of analytics, so on and so forth. And we'll get into a little bit of the differentiation by title too. But, John asked me, hey, could you talk to some of the key things that you're seeing here? And I'm going to make this as big as possible. So in the report, I have these opening bullet points, and it's a lot of text here, but I'm going to try to talk to the bold points here. So a couple things when I look at the latest data, the latest version of the report that I've put together, though there's tons and tons of skills that you'll see out there, it's probably overwhelming to you. I know it is for me when I start looking at positions that are out there when I pull this report together every 6 months. But, there's these positions you'll see where it'll have like 15 or 20 skills, hard skills listed, and there's several of them out there. It's not all, but then there's quite a few that have like 5 or 10 or 3 to 5, stuff like that. And though there are, if you add all those up, I'll show you what the word cloud looks like from this last 6 months of the positions I surveyed. It's a lot. There's a lot of skills out there, and I'm sure you feel that if you're looking for something in the market, right? But there's a couple, the 80-20 rule, John?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Pareto.
Exactly. It's what you can find some solace in is that, there's really the 20% that I see that kind of are in a majority of position postings. And if I were going out into the field today, I'd probably focus on getting really good at those critical few.
Yep.
So SQL and data visualization pop to the top. They actually were listed as a required skill, and it's data visualization agnostic to the platform. I'm lumping them all together here, but they were actually required in more than half of the positions. So that's a big observation, and I'll show you what the trending looks like over time. I mentioned how the 80-20 rule applies, and you'll see that in the word cloud. I'm going to show you kind of a visual representation of that. But another thing that pops to me, and this makes a lot of sense to me, having been a manager in the field as well, is this ability, what comes out to me, reading between the lines a little bit. Sometimes it's directly, sometimes it's indirect, but reading between the lines over 100 position postings I look at, every 6 months, that ability to acquire the data, so think being able to query it using SQL, acquire the data, analyze it, think about that as data visualization, or Excel or whatever, you put together your analysis, but then also on the other side of things, tell a story with it. And I'm starting to see more and more in position postings like data storytelling with data. We all know the book, right, by Cole. That listed as actually a hard skill in some cases. Sometimes it's kind of they're dancing around it and not stating it directly. But to me, it really is acquiring, analyzing, and telling a story with it. That's kind of the complete package in terms of adding business value. John, I'm curious, so you guys at Maven, do you see kind of hear the same thing from folks you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. And for us, like I'd say SQL, obviously pops to the top and has just forever basically. And then specifically within data visualization, we hear a lot of Tableau and Power BI, and that's where we've really decided to focus. There's a couple others too that are getting a little bit of market share, but those continue to kind of be the heavyweights. And yeah, absolutely hearing the same thing. And just thinking about the analysts who I felt were extremely valuable to a company, that data storytelling is probably more important than any specific tool knowledge that they had. The ability to figure out what the story is and then convince some stakeholders that there's a reason to take action and make it really clear. It's probably the top skill, if not near the very, very top in terms of being an effective analyst too. So this is really awesome to see.
Yep, for sure. Totally. Very cool. And actually someone asked a question about remote positions. I do actually have some data points on that. I'll get to that. So just hang tight for just a moment there. Good question. Last thing I'm going to touch on here before I get into kind of the funner stuff, the more visual stuff, but really in terms of the, U.S. Canadian based roles here, that's going to be most of the data I'm looking at. The U.S. dollar salaries are very strong. In fact, actually, surprisingly so, almost to me, when I looked at it in this last report. And I'll show you kind of how it breaks down range wise, analyst to senior analyst to manager to director. But you may say, how do you know what this is just looking at position postings? And, to be honest with you, until a year ago or so, I really wasn't collecting this, but because of some of the changes in laws and that state by state in the United States, some states are now requiring a range to be posted along with the position. So I actually started collecting that data point about a year ago.
Awesome. Yeah. I know New York has done that. Is it California also?
California for sure. There are a few others. If you just quickly Google United States salary range requirements or whatever, I know there's a couple sites that pop up that have the latest legislation for each of them.
Yeah, cool. Really interesting.
Yeah, Colorado is one. Courtney said, "Yep, for sure." Yep. Cool. Okay, so let's get into what are the hard skills that we're seeing, in those 100 positions I'm surveying every 6 months. So I'm just going to quickly show you. I've got in this report, I've got the top 12, but you see SQL's at top, and this has been trending upwards over the last 4 years. So this is how many positions are listing SQL as a requirement in the positions. So it's gone from 32% in 2019 to 61% today.
Wow.
Yeah. So almost doubled, right? And it's in well over half of the positions. So think about on that acquire phase of the acquire, analyze, tell a story with it, right?
Yep.
Tableau and Power BI, both kind of a long, term trend, just kind of moving upwards with, from my standpoint, the tide of the demand for data and analytics roles. An interesting one this last 6 months was Python moving into, it had been in the top 6 or 7 or so, but moved into the top 3, actually with 30% requiring that. And I want to show just kind of a nice, concise snapshot. Actually, I'm going to scroll down to this summary view here. There we go. If we took all of the data visualization tools and lumped them together, what would this look like in terms of SQL, data visualization, and so on? So SQL was the top skill. 61% of positions required SQL. 55% required a data visualization tool of some sort. And here you see that breakdown. I was just showing you Tableau versus Power BI. And then there is another category, and John touched on it earlier, of other data visualization tools. There are several in the market. There are others that large organizations use. That makes up 9%. So say roughly, a tenth of the positions are actually asking for a tool outside of Tableau or Power BI. So we got SQL and data viz is for sure the big two. More than half of the positions out there asking for those. I opened with that first bullet point. and then 30% on Python, and you see the upward trend there. And I think that's on that, certainly on the acquire and analyze side of the equation. And then Excel, 26%. This one bounces around a little bit. It had been lifting up quite a bit, actually, I think just kind of with that rising tide around data analytics. But we'll see where that one goes. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. As for the direction, your guess is as good as mine on that one. And then 24%, the industry experience. This is an interesting one because about a quarter of the positions list industry experience as a requirement. So if you're in manufacturing or you're in, healthcare, there might be a requirement of like 2 years of healthcare experience or 2 years of financial industry experience or something like that. We see it as a requirement. We also see it as a preferred skill pretty often as well. So if it's not required, it's preferred. And I do have some thoughts on that. I'm curious, John, your take on that as well. I'm going to actually, I'm going to leave this before I go on the next thing and just pause for John, if you have any reaction to this.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so interested that you quantified that, the required industry experience, because when folks talk to us about transitioning from a non-data analyst role into a data analyst role, that's actually one of the pieces of advice that we can give them is, if you have some kind of domain knowledge, that's a real leg up over somebody else who just has the data skills but doesn't necessarily know the industry, right? Because when we think about, again, the analysts who are really valuable and can move the needle for a business, it's the technical skills, but it's also things like communication and things like understanding the business that you're working in and what are the levers that the business could pull to be more effective. And so if you have some specific industry knowledge, even as a non-analyst, it can really help you get a data analyst role in that specific industry. So super interesting. I'm kind of surprised the number is that high, but then also not surprised at the same time because it is so valuable. So that's fantastic to see.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, interesting comment from Anthony here, which I agree. He's saying hiring manager here preferred as a qualifier skill. If there's 15 applying to the role, the 5 with the preferred skills will be prioritized. I do think there's truth to that. It's always case by case, but I agree with that sentiment. But on the flip side, so you may say someone, that's trying to get into the field might say, gosh, like that seems like a barrier to me then. Well, it could also be an opportunity because what I would probably do if I was in a healthcare job, or I was in a, finance job or a product management job or whatever, I would take the skills that I'm learning, say through Maven Analytics or wherever it is that you're learning the skills. And I would say I'm going to apply them to a incremental project, a new project that I'm going to do that's going to add value back to my organization or team using those skills and kind of like start to become an analyst in your role. Of course you want to stay in communication with your boss about this, and make sure they're okay with it. But I think that what's going to happen is you're going to get better with the skills. And then also folks are going to realize like, wow, like this person knows what they're doing with these skills. Like, I wonder if this person could go into this role that's maybe an analyst role, or even if that doesn't happen internally or open up conversations, at least about you making that movement internally, you can absolutely put that experience on your resume, and then I think that gives you a leg up, if you're going towards an external position. So that's my standpoint on how to take that and kind of leverage that into an opportunity.
I love that. I'll sometimes talk about that as the side door strategy to becoming an analyst.
Right.
And what I say is like, don't wait for somebody to give you a data analyst title. Just start being a data analyst, get your hands on data, start doing the work. And then, like Dustin said, that could lead to an opportunity internally, or it could be your best ammunition in an interview externally when you're talking about your experience. So I love that. That advice is fantastic.
For sure. Totally. I did want to just, as I close out talking about the required hard skills, I wanted to just put this up. I'll zoom way in on this. This is, it's half for fun, but it's also just to hammer the point home. When I put together a word cloud of all of the hard skill requirements that are out there in those positions that I survey, you see the 80-20 rule here. You see a lot of unique skills mentioned. I think there was over 100 in this last report. But then you see those ones that we were just looking at, in those trend charts really pop out as the 20% that are maybe adding the 80% of the value. And I can tell you from being in the industry, this makes sense anecdotally to me, for sure. Ability to get that data, analyze it, tell the story. I talked to 95% of my peers in data analytics, and that's the stuff they're working on day in and day out.
Yeah, this is awesome. And I'd say none of the ones that are popping seem surprising to me at all. This seems like a really, really good list. So, not that my opinion matters much, but it gut checks,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There was some questions about salaries. I'm going to go through the report here. Part of this is to, as I scroll through these pages, just keep in the back of your mind that you can attend the Data Career Summit every 6 months. You'll get a update from me. And also we're working on ways to, better get this information out to everyone in the future. So you know that this is attached to the Data Career Summit and kind of a benefit of attending that event. But folks were asking about salary ranges. So I'll show you the money, so to speak. We'll do the Jerry Maguire style here. So I started collecting this data about a year ago. There's just to be clear, there's salary ranges that are starting to appear usually near the bottom of position postings. And this is usually a legal requirement depending on the state that the poster is in. And what I've done is I've actually started to, so I can segment, the cool thing is I can segment those salary ranges by the position level because I'm collecting all the other data on the position, right? I'm collecting the seniority level, the title, the hard skills, the education requirements, all these things. So we can kind of segment this in some cool ways. And you see, I kind of started this is just to show you visually a scatter plot of like, what is the low end range and high end range of these look like per position? Each dot is a position. What does that look like on a scatter plot? And the gray dots are going to be kind of those manager and above level roles. And then the gold dots are the analyst and senior analyst level roles. And let's go through it kind of level by level. So in US dollars for analyst level positions, what I have seen is an average low end salary of 85K to an average high end salary of 122K. And you see these lines, reference lines put right in there. And I'm highlighting the yellow dots of just those analyst level roles there. Senior analyst, seeing 102 to 149. You see those lines, those reference lines shift up. I'm using Tableau for this. I know the question is going to come up. So yes, this is a Tableau visualization, a rather simple one at that. But manager and senior manager, 116 to 166K. You see I'm continuing to shift up a little bit, but you see the variation, and these dots are all over the place, right? Especially go back to the senior analyst, right? Like all over the place. I mean,
yeah.
What this tells me is if you start to get a niche skill set, in a field or industry where it's really needed, or organization where it's invaluable, sky is kind of the limit. I would guess that some of these salary ranges might touch up against the lower end of some executive salaries as well. And so I know that's not going to happen in every case, but I think it's interesting. John, you're going to say something.
No, just saying, I love seeing this data. Again, I think one of the reasons that we wanted Dustin to do this is I think he's done a better job than anybody I've seen at aggregating this and then presenting it to tell the story. This is not what the range was when I was an analyst or a senior analyst. Like, I know there's inflation and it came up, but I wish it was. Like this to me, this paints a pretty strong picture of the market, and I love to see that. So it's really cool to see this, and it's just the market looks strong when you see these types of ranges. These look really attractive.
Yep. And Anthony asked a great question. I will clarify. I want to be super transparent about this, just as I think I was at the beginning, but just to hammer it home. I can only pull data that's available in the post, right? And so, he said, is it for coastal geographies? So New York and California are on the coast, but it's not only coast. There are some others. Folks mentioned Colorado. I don't know the list off the top of my head of all the states. I believe it's like 8 to 10, maybe more. John, you may know better than I. But one thing to keep in mind is that one thing that I've seen is positions posted where like one of the states is in the area that requires it, but then they're also saying it's open to hybrid or remote across a whole litany of states.
Yeah.
And so then it's, it's not necessarily specific to that home state, if you will. So it does vary. Skewed slightly, yes. It's skewed a little, I would say. That's a valid point. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good read. Yeah.
Yep.
Smart.
Yep. Does the underlying data break it out by industry type? I'm just looking at some of the questions coming in. So that's the next step. So I just started collecting this a year ago, and I'm kind of wrapping my head around all the things I can do with it. And industry is a segmentation level that I would like to go to next, Allie. That's a great question. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. So I mentioned the manager and senior manager and then director level above, and this is always going to be a big range, but 158K to 235K. So pretty significant there, but I'm going to go back up and maybe I know we're at 1036. I'll share one or two, maybe final insights from here. Let me zoom in on this one. You may say, okay, so I'm shooting for a salary range like that, but like, how long does it take me to get there? Well, it's going to be case by case as always, but I do track also the years of experience required, and I can segment those by seniority level as well. And when you look at the manager and senior analyst level roles, I see it here, and I also see it anecdotally and kind of reading through all of these. It's kind of that 4 to 5 year range of experience to get there. And from my standpoint, it's more, the industry specific skills, the skills that are needed for that particular role. It's less about the years of experience and more about the actual expertise and abilities that you take to the role to get there. Again, yep. my read on the data as well as the positions.
Yeah. Yeah. And another piece that can kind of impact this is like the state of the market. So like for me personally, when I was getting started as an analyst, the market was brutal. So like I was an analyst for a long time before I got to be a senior analyst. And then the market really recovered and there was a huge demand for talent. So I got to be a senior analyst and a manager and a director in a really compressed window after kind of really lagging at the beginning. So sometimes you can kind of feel that it can ebb and flow with where the industry is at and demand for talent too.
For sure. Absolutely. That's a good point. And then I did want to touch on, I won't share everything in here, but someone asked about remote positions. Maybe I didn't put it in the latest report. So I can speak to it though, because I've been tracking it. Remote positions. Here's what happened with those. So when I first started with collecting this data, I remember the stat because it was the first data point on remote positions when I started the report. It was at 3% of the, so 3 out of 100 were remote. And that was back in 2019 when I started the report. What happened was it slowly increased up until the point of the pandemic. Then it went way up. And then what's happened is it hasn't come back down to the pre-pandemic baseline, but it has come back down. So It's like, think about a trend like this. Peak point pandemic, come down a little bit like this, and then it's kind of like tapering off like this, maybe around like I'm gonna don't hold me to it, but like 30% or something like 25, 30%. I don't know if John, that aligns with things you're seeing. Yeah.
I mean the shape of that curve you're describing definitely I think makes sense both for our industry and overall in other industries. For a minute it was like every company was just whoever wants to be remote, and we'll take any talent. I think now it's more competitive, because a lot of talent wants the remote job above all else, because for me personally, I have small kids. I'm in my house right now. I can put in a workday with a 30-second commute down the stairs and I see them as soon as the workday's over, right? It's like, I would not change that for anything. So, and there's other people, like we had Annie Nelson on last. She's in a fully remote company, GitLab, and she likes working from all over the world. And like, I got little kids, so I'm a little more rooted, but just there's different reasons that those remote jobs are incredible. And I think they're really, really in demand. I think they're a little harder to get now, but still way accelerated from where they were pre-pandemic, but not quite at the peak. So and you're mostly remote, Dustin.
Correct. Yeah. And actually a shout out to my company Wisdom. So you mentioned product manager for our Tableau product. So just to thank them for allowing me to be able to do stuff like this. And definitely is one of the advantages of having remote positions and being in the industry and getting invited to do stuff like this. But yeah, I'm product manager for Wisdom Ops for Tableau. And we do analytics governance for data visualization tools, SAP Business Objects, all kinds of cool stuff. Quick plug, check them out if you're interested in analytics governance, wisdom.com. 3 eyes.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. You want to get in the hot seat and take some of these questions?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just looking through these. So Ross, So Ross says, how often do I see postings that blur the lines? Oh, there they are. Yes, thank you. How often do I see postings that blur the lines between data analyst skills and engineering and science skills? For sure, is feeling more common. The number of skills that I'm collecting, it gets bigger and bigger over time that you see across all these postings. I do think that there's organizations that do want the jack of all trades, so to speak. But whether that's realistic or not, I'd be curious to see how they fill those positions and the success of that. But I do see it. I mean, you can look at some data analyst positions where it's like it lists all kinds of hardcore data engineering related, requirements in there, and it's like this really isn't a role that's going to analyze and storytell with data. I mean, if it was, that would be quite a person to have all those skills, and I'm sure they exist. But I think we'll see more delineation. Personally, I think right now, like as the field grows, we're seeing kind of these skills getting thrown all over the place into different positions. And then I think we'll probably see some more delineation as teams get better defined in that over time, just my personal perspective on it. But yes, I do see it.
Yeah. I think that's a great observation. And then there's the old joke of like, what's a data scientist? It's a data analyst that works in San Francisco, so sometimes the titles can be sometimes inconsistent. So it's hard. I think it's more important than the title to read the job description and understand the specific type of work that you're doing. Because, some people will say, oh, let's call it data scientist. We think that's a sexier title to attract people, but really like you're doing pivot tables in Excel. And that's just what they wanted to call it. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, totally. Anthony had a good question here. Anthony Larby, I believe is the last name. Any course that can help with the storytelling skill. It sounds like Maven Analytics has some good resources on this.
Yeah, we can. So I shared a blog post here under Anthony's question, and then we also have a course called Thinking Like an Analyst, and it's not just about data visualization, but it's all about the mental framework that an analyst should have. So understanding how the brain processes information visually, some things to take advantage of there. We also get into things like how and why you need to do measurement planning. We do things about the workflow of cleaning and preparing data. So it's a little bit of a kind of less of a technical tool-based course and more about just understanding how an analyst thinks. It is our most popular course. It's just one we recommend everybody takes. So that's called Thinking Like an Analyst. And that one's great. There's also there's some great books out about data visualization. You mentioned Cole's book is yep. Great. But there's a whole bunch out there too. So it's a good field to learn about.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. I'm actually going to drop, if you don't mind, John, there. Cole actually gave a keynote at our very first Data Career Summit.
Awesome.
And I'll just drop a link in the chat.
Yeah, definitely.
To our YouTube channel. You can take a look at the recording. It's out there for free.
Awesome.
If you'd like. There's some questions on regional.
And welcome to the Data Career Summit. Huh. My name is Brandy.
I was like, how did Brandy get in here?
How's she on stage? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Maybe take one question more, John, do you think? Or I know we're coming.
Absolutely.
Did we have the whole hour or is it just 45?
We've got we can run over probably another 5 or 10 minutes, and then we should let people grab a bite to eat or run to the bathroom before the next one.
Yep. Sounds good. Okay. Go back to the questions. So there's some questions on timing and then region. most of my expertise on the analytics jobs market is going to be in North America. However, I am seeing, as I built that jobs list that I put out every Friday, I'm seeing even in my own feed more and more positions outside of North America. And as I see those, I share those as well. So again, it's gonna my posting that I share every Friday leans towards where I live. But as I have a more global following, and I see those position postings in my feed, I'm sharing those as well. One thing that I would recommend doing is there's some really good like search and filtering capabilities on LinkedIn. And it's pretty powerful in terms of being able to find out like who's posting on certain topics or in certain areas. And that could be a good way to just find like who's talking about these topics, who's posting jobs like in your area. That's something that I would recommend taking a look at. John, I don't know if you guys have any more advice that you give.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. I think if you guys follow that, you'll definitely be onto some opportunities pretty quickly, which is great. Let me see. This one I think could be pretty good to hear your take on. So should people go broad or should they niche down when they're thinking about which skills to learn?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, if there's a certain industry that my answer to this would be different whether if you're in a job now versus if you're not in a job now. If you're in a job now, I would really try to learn whatever skill or two it is that could allow you to do a project that adds value immediately to your organization within the context of your current role. So that could be any number of skills. It might even just be one skill. But see if you can talk to folks that have done impactful projects in your industry, learn what those are, learn what the skills were to do them, and then learn that skill and do that project. That would be one piece of advice. If you don't have a position, you're going into the field, I would say for sure focus on those big ones, the 20%, adding the 80% of value, so to speak, to use the 80-20 rule with the skill requirements that you saw. So your SQL, your data visualization, et cetera. I would for sure start with those two. But I would also, Maven Analytics has challenges. There's other challenges out there. I would start getting, dip your toe in the water of doing a challenge, putting your work out there, getting feedback on it, getting a project portfolio. These are all good things to do. And I don't know that I would go too deep in the more advanced skills personally right away. I would probably try to get really good at a few, do some good projects, do some really good networking activities, get that first role, and then go deeper based upon what you need after that. But that's just one person's opinion. There are different takes on this. I'm sure you heard it from some of the other panelists, and we'll continue. So keep asking the question. Don't take Dustin's opinion only.
I think it's a great opinion. It's a great take on it. I'd also just add like one, I think along the same lines, I would say just go with Excel and start trying to solve problems with Excel, because to me, it's the least intimidating. It's the least to learn. You might already be familiar, and it's still this amazing tool that you could do formulas and functions to manipulate data. You could do pivot tables to slice and dice and do some exploratory stuff. And you could do charts and graphs right there. So like I had a full 5-year career where I just used Excel, and then I got into some things that Excel couldn't solve and I had to get into other tools, but like 5 years of employment doing decently well on basically as an Excel jockey. So I always tell people go there. Yeah. Awesome. Want to try one more, Dustin?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Your pick. Let's see
what we got here. Any advice to deal with imposter syndrome? This is something that I've actually been asked about 3 times this week already about and have heard from folks that struggle with it that are, from my standpoint, very experienced. And I would never know that they had imposter syndrome had they not said that they do. So I think that statement is a partial answer to the question in and of itself. Everybody has this in some way, shape, or form. You saw the entire swath of skills that's out there. I mean, no person out there knows every single one of them, and certainly doesn't know all of them to really deep level. And so it's a real thing for sure. I think from my standpoint, I definitely have had it over the course of my career, but one way to break it is to if you start saying yes to things that scare you a little bit, speak in or sharing your ideas or things like that, and you see how much value those things often add, I think that helps break it pretty quickly. Because the one thing that I found is that most people don't step out and like do that extra project or share their idea or like, say yes to something that scares them. Could be speaking opportunities, could be something else, could be posting on LinkedIn, whatever. The more you do of those activities, the less you're going to feel that way, because you're going to realize that, wow, like very few people do this. And also like a lot of what I say resonates with people and things like this. So just, things to build the confidence up, but also know that everyone goes through this.
Yeah, I love that advice. Being comfortable with being uncomfortable is a muscle, just like anything else. And so I think that's really good advice. So I'm going to drop one final time into the links here, some places to see more about Dustin. And I'll also drop a link to our next session with Enrique, which starts in about 9 minutes. So Dustin, thank you so much. This is super valuable. Thanks for putting all this stuff together and putting it out there. And thanks for sharing it with our audience. Everybody who's watching, thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys found this really valuable. I'm sure that you did. Make sure you go follow Dustin on LinkedIn. Check out the Data Careers Summit. I think, can they register already for the February summit?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. There actually is an event that we have for Eventbrite. I'll actually put it right out there.
Awesome.
Yep. So there it is. And we can also, we have a LinkedIn company page. You can follow us there or follow me, we write about it all the time. So thank you so much for having me. This was really an honor to be here, John.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You rocked it. I think tons of value transmitted to the audience, just like with everything you do. So thanks a ton. and I'll be seeing you around soon.
Thank you, John. Yep. Thanks everyone. Good talking with you. Bye-bye.